The Cleveland Museum of Art houses an enigmatic Champlevé enamel medallion from the medieval world. The 2.5-inch in diameter medallion serves as a portal from our modern 21st century to the 12th century, rich with legendary heroes and foes. During the Middle Ages, craftsmanship flourished alongside, or in spite of, an environment of ever-present violence and fear. We will explore the medallion's craftsmanship and iconography as a representative of the work of a master craftsman, storyteller of legendary archetypes and theology, and evidence of the violence that permeated daily life in the Middle Ages. The figures on the medallion are a youthful warrior brandishing a sword and shield, and a winged dragon surrounded by ornamental greenery in a stylistic manner. The youth holds a white sword in his right hand and a red, blue, and white shield in his left hand. He is wearing the costume of a nobleman with its wide white undergarment, light blue tunic, wide white belt decorated with gold medallions, and white footwear. The dragon is colored with the same red, blue, and white enamel color. The dragon's tail is closest to the youth, with its forearms directed away, as if it is either running from the youth or turning to attack him. The dragon's wings are outspread. The figures are centered and nearly fill the circular compositional space of the medallion. The greenery that serves to fill most of the negative space appears by its wide stems and leaves to be flourishing. There is a narrow border of plain gold gilding around the outer border of the medallion, which serves to frame the scene. The youth's left foot is forward with his right leg slightly bent, and right arm held high and back as he holds the shield in his left hand at waist and shoulder height. The youth appears ready to strike the dragon. The dramatic scene conveys the moment of tension before the youth swings his sword forth, similar to the way Michelangelo's David will stand ready to take down another type of monster, moments before he deals the final blow to Goliath a few hundred years later during the Renaissance. In these examples of Champlevé enamel work and illuminated manuscripts, we can see the effect that clearly defined fields of brilliant colors have against a gilded background. Enamel work was mainly crafted using the Champlevé or cloisonné method. Cloisonné comes from cloisonnés, or sections, as in a cloister of nuns sectioned off from the world. Thin gold and silver wire was attached to the metal plate, defining sections to be filled with ground glass, wet packed with water, and applied with a quill. While the application of the colored crushed glass mixed with water was utilized in Champlevé, or engraved fields, the sections to fill were engraved into the plate, allowing the craftsman greater latitude with the design, as he could vary the width of the lines and even leave some areas to resemble the fields of gold often seen in illuminated books, fondo de oro. Some likened the sheen of tempera to the sheen of enameled metalwork. The plates were often gilded, but the base was usually made from relatively inexpensive copper. Plates were cut and gilded with gold, allowing the craftsman to fire the piece at a higher temperature, with less chance of a gold plate and the crushed glass melting into one another. We can see in the video from the Victoria and Albert Museum how a medieval craftsman would have made a Champlevé enameled piece. Champlevé enamels are made today much as they were in medieval times. One still marks the copper plate with a design and uses a tool to engrave the areas to be filled with colored glass. One still uses finely crushed and rinsed glass, mixing it with water to the consistency of wet packed sand. Tools like the quills used in the Middle Ages are still used to transfer the wet enamel to the fields on the plate. Multiple firings and building up the fields with layers of enamel remain the firing and coloring process in our modern world. Modern craftsmen still rub the enameled piece with a special stone under running water. We may have digital kilns and laser tools, but many still make Champlevé enamels as they did in the medieval world. When we compare the tools we have available in the 21st century to what the medieval craftsmen had available, we can more greatly appreciate the exquisite enamel work craftsmen achieved nearly 1,000 years ago. Chaucer spoke to the skill required of a medieval enamelist. The life so short, the craft so long to learn. Kenneth Bates, a well-known enamelist, remarked that the tools of the enamelist were like paintbrushes. We can consider enamels as paintings in glass. The enameler could tell a story as forceful as any painter. As today, it was then true that the craftsman and artist played a key role in disseminating powerful imagery, like the Cleveland Museum of Art's warrior fighting a dragon piece, into their world. The theme of a warrior and dragon was not new to the Middle Ages. Tales of Beowulf and the monster Grendel were popular. The Irish had their Cuchulainn, and the medieval folk were familiar with the Arthurian legend and the story of Tristan and Isolde, in which Tristan must kill a dragon as one of his tasks. In addition to pagan and secular heroes, early Christian theology followed the hero versus the monster archetype. Christ trampled beasts and monsters. St. Anthony of the Desert battled monsters and evil beasts, and the story of St. Michael and the dragon was as well recognized in medieval times as it is today. The story of St. George and the dragon was a popular legend with the Crusaders. The warrior fighting a dragon piece was made during the Crusades, toward the end of the unsuccessful Second Crusades, and before the Third Crusades began. After Pope Urban II announced that knights were now allowed to kill non-Christians, the warring factions of Europe banded together in the name of God to murder any non-Christians and receive pardons for their previous sins. Knights swore to protect Christianity, their lords, and women and children in their proclaimed chivalrous endeavors. Romantic legends like the legend of St. George and the dragon were popular. Warrior and dragon iconography was popular in a land run rampant by so much war and death. People created hero legends out of a need for such a man. Christianity brought more than bloody crusades to the medieval world. In addition to heroic legends of defeated monsters and heathens, so defined by merely not being a Christian, warrior and dragon iconography represented the struggle between good and evil within one's internal and spiritual life. Indeed, the heroic code likened good with humans and heroes. In kind, a monster was evil and the opposite of a human. It must be destroyed. The warrior and dragon iconography was a metaphor for spiritual battle, bellum spirituale. As the warrior fighting a dragon medallion shows a knight on foot rather than on a horse, we might consider the medallion serves a psalmic purpose to remind the knight of his allegiance to God and honor, and his internal fight against dragons, monsters, and his own sinful nature. The dragon was the king of the serpents. The serpent was the evil presence in the Garden of Eden, and a metaphor for indulgence in temptation and sin. That medieval folk illustrated Ephesians 6:11 in a literal sense did not diminish their understanding of the spiritual meaning of putting on the armor of God to stand against the devil. If weapons were granted to heroes by deities, the medieval warrior's sword against evil was given to him by God. A warrior puts on his armor, spiritual armor represented by the image of a warrior wearing literal armor. The warrior fights against his inner demons and the evil nature of man, as the image of the warrior fights against the king of the serpents and the devil. As violence and fear were common partners in the daily life of medieval folk, one faced internal spiritual struggles against the constant temptation to sin. Medieval prayers included pleas to God to free oneself from the eternal immortal dragon. People of the Middle Ages took their prayers and psalters seriously, believing that they warded off evil, as Hollywood movies tell us garlic wards off vampires. Yet, we do not know to what item the warrior fighting a dragon was attached. Perhaps it was a talisman serving as a protective psalter, like wearing a cross on a necklace. Perhaps a knight had it made to attach it to his personal effects, believing it could keep him safe from evil temptations and murderous foes. Perhaps the owner of the warrior fighting a dragon had it made to remind himself of his devotion to God and his Christian heart. The warrior fighting a dragon is a small item rich with history. It gives us a renewed appreciation for master medieval craftsmen. It offers us a glimpse into the legends and theology of the Middle Ages, where people yearned for a hero to save them from the everyday monsters of evil and fear. And it harkens to an age where violence was a way of life. The warrior fighting a dragon also offers us camaraderie with our medieval ancestors as we too aspire and work toward a nobler, more humanitarian, and spiritually devoted life.